The sun was just beginning to climb over the horizon, casting a soft orange glow across the sprawling military base. Soldiers were going about their morning routines, drills, inspections, and the occasional laughter echoing across the barracks. Among them, walking calmly with an air of quiet confidence, was Steven Seagal. Dressed in a simple black jacket and sunglasses, he had arrived at the base for a demonstration and charity event, shaking hands and exchanging greetings with staff. For most, his presence brought excitement. Whispers of awe and admiration spread as the martial arts legend moved among the troops. But one person, standing tall and rigid in his uniform, saw something else. The general, known for his strictness and no-nonsense attitude, he had a reputation for intolerance toward anything he perceived as disrespectful. And that morning, he misread Steven's calm demeanor. Without warning, the general stormed forward, his face red with anger. His hand shot out and grabbed Seagal by the hair, yanking him sharply toward him. The soldiers froze mid-step, their eyes wide in disbelief. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire across the base. No one had expected the general, a man of authority and power, to act so aggressively toward a visitor, let alone a celebrity of Seagal's stature. Steven remained eerily still. His expression didn't flare with anger, nor did he resist physically. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, letting the general feel the full weight of his calm, unwavering gaze. Every soldier present could sense the tension in the air. It was a silent standoff, a test of courage and composure. The general tightened his grip, his voice sharp and commanding. "Do you think you can just walk through my base without respect?" he barked. Steven's response was slow, deliberate. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lunge. He simply met the general's intensity with a controlled calm that made even the toughest soldiers shift uneasily. And in that moment, every eye at the base, from the youngest private to the senior officers, held their breath. What Steven did next shocked and terrified the entire base. The stage was set for a confrontation unlike anything the base had ever witnessed, a collision of power, skill, and unshakable composure. The soldiers held their breath, unsure whether to intervene or stay frozen in place. Whispers spread like wildfire across the base. Did the general just grab him? And that's Steven Seagal, the martial arts master. But the general seemed oblivious to the shock he had caused. His grip on Seagal's hair was firm, his glare unyielding. Steven, however, didn't flinch. His calm presence seemed almost unnatural given the aggression directed at him. He slowly lifted a hand, not to strike, but to touch the general's wrist gently, testing the strength of the grip. His gaze never wavered, meeting the general's eyes with an intensity that made even the most confident officers in the room step back. The general barked, his voice echoing across the training grounds. "Do you think you can walk through my base like you own it?" Steven's reply was measured, calm, and piercing. "I came here to respect your base and the people in it. Nothing more." A hush fell over the crowd. Soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to be impressed or fearful. A few quickly pulled out their phones, trying to capture the moment without being noticed. The air was thick with tension. Every second felt like it could erupt into chaos. The general's face turned redder, veins bulging. He stepped closer, tightening his grip. "I don't care who you are. You show me respect, or you'll regret it." Steven did not flinch. He remained grounded, breathing slowly, projecting calm authority. His control over the situation was palpable. The soldiers began to notice something extraordinary. This was not fear, but a quiet power. Every muscle in Steven's body was relaxed, yet ready, a perfect balance of control and strength. One by one, the younger soldiers began whispering, "That's Seagal. He's not just some celebrity. He's the master of Aikido. Nobody moves like that." The tension was electric. The general was furious, the crowd was mesmerized, and Steven remained calm. He let the general exhaust himself, using silence as his tool. Every second he stayed composed. The more the base felt the shift in power. If you were standing here right now, would you step in to help, or would you stay silent? And tell me, which country or city are you watching this from? Comment below. The whispers grew louder. Soldiers began to subtly record the encounter on their phones, knowing this would be a moment for the history books. Some were shaking, unable to believe what they were witnessing. A confrontation that could have gone violently wrong, yet held steady by the composure of one man. Seagal's calmness had already started to unsettle the general. His eyes flickered, his jaw tightened, and for the first time, the officer in command realized he might be facing someone who would not be intimidated. Every threat the general tried to project seemed to bounce off Steven's serene composure. The tension in the air became almost unbearable. Every soldier knew they were witnessing something historic, not because of violence, but because of self-control, courage, and the quiet power of standing firm against authority without aggression. And in that heavy silence, one question echoed in the minds of everyone on the base. What will Steven Seagal do next? The base held its collective breath, waiting for the next move that would either escalate the situation or transform the confrontation into a lesson in respect and control. The base seemed to hold its breath. Soldiers froze mid-step, their eyes darting between Steven Seagal and the furious general. The grip on Seagal's hair tightened, a stark reminder of authority clashing with calm defiance. Whispers spread throughout the crowd, a mix of awe and fear. This is insane. He's actually standing there, just standing. Steven didn't struggle. He didn't shout. He simply planted his feet, shoulders squared, breathing slow and steady. Every small movement he made seemed intentional, controlled, and precise. His calmness was unnerving, more powerful than aggression itself. The general, on the other hand, was boiling with frustration. His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence like a whip. "Do you think you can disrespect my base and my soldiers?" the general barked, trying to intimidate Steven. Steven met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not here to disrespect anyone," he said calmly, his voice carrying across the training grounds. "I came to show respect, but respect goes both ways." The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Some were recording the scene discreetly on their phones, capturing the moment that was quickly turning into a standoff of wills. Others whispered nervously to each other. It wasn't just a confrontation between a martial arts legend and a high-ranking officer. It was a lesson in control, humility, and courage unfolding in real time. The general's face was red, his jaw tight. He tightened his grip on Seagal's hair, but Steven didn't react. Instead, he leaned just slightly forward, tilting his head in a subtle but unmistakable gesture of focus. The general blinked, confused by the calm intensity of his opponent. This was not someone to push around. This was someone who understood power and control far beyond the ordinary. "Let go of me," Steven said, not as a demand, but as a statement of fact. His tone was neutral, almost gentle, but it carried a weight that made the general hesitate. The base was silent except for the faint whir of cameras from phones, capturing every moment. Even the most hardened soldiers couldn't look away. They were witnessing a confrontation unlike any other. Authority tested by patience, aggression met with composure, and tension that could explode at any second. Seagal's calm demeanor began to shift the energy. Soldiers who had been afraid to move now whispered to one another. "He's not scared. He's controlling the situation without raising a hand." The general's attempts to intimidate him seemed increasingly ineffective. Every harsh word and aggressive move bounced off Seagal's unshakable poise. If you were in Steven Seagal's shoes right now, would you stand your ground, or would you walk away? Type stand if you'd resist, or step back if you'd avoid conflict. I want to know what you'd do. The general's frustration reached a peak. He yanked harder, trying to assert control physically, but Steven's body remained relaxed, his calm presence absorbing the aggression. The tension was like a coiled spring. The soldiers could feel it in their bones. Every second stretched longer than the last, as if time itself slowed, waiting for the next move. Steven finally spoke again, softly but firmly. "Respect is not taken by force. It is earned by how you treat others." His words hit like a shockwave. Some soldiers glanced at one another, nodding subtly. Even those loyal to the general could see the truth in Seagal's words. The general froze for a brief second, just long enough for everyone to notice, his control slipping. He was no longer the one in command of the moment. The energy of the base had shifted toward the calm, measured authority of Steven Seagal. Soldiers holding cameras began to whisper excitedly. Some could barely contain their awe. He's teaching him a lesson without even touching him. And then came the subtle shift. The general's stance wavered, his face flushing as he realized that aggression alone could not dominate this man. The standoff was no longer a test of force. It was a test of respect, patience, and the power of composure under pressure. Every eye in the base was glued to the scene. Everyone understood, even if only subconsciously, that they were witnessing something extraordinary. A man unafraid to confront authority, yet doing so with dignity and restraint. The crowd collectively held its breath, waiting for the next move. Would the general escalate further, risking humiliation, or would he realize that Steven Seagal's calm strength was a lesson in itself? The tension hung thick in the air, electric and palpable. The tension on the base was palpable. Soldiers still held their breath, frozen in a mix of fear and awe. Every movement, every blink seemed amplified in the standoff between Steven Seagal and the furious general. The general had grown visibly frustrated, his anger simmering behind every tense word, every rigid posture. But Seagal, as always, remained composed, a picture of calm authority that seemed to defy the chaos around him. Whispers began to circulate among the soldiers. One young private nudged his buddy, voice barely above a whisper. "Wait, isn't that Steven Seagal?" "What?" the other soldier replied, squinting. "No way, that's just a visitor." But the first soldier's eyes were sharp. He recognized the stance, the calm aura, the unmistakable poise of a true martial artist. "That's Seagal, the master of Aikido," he whispered, disbelief written across his face. The whisper spread. One by one, soldiers began to recognize the man standing silently, calmly, in the middle of what had quickly become a tense confrontation. Some shook their heads in amazement. Others muttered in awe. The general, however, still had no idea what he was dealing with. His eyes narrowed, unaware that the man he was trying to intimidate was not just a celebrity, but a master of martial arts. A man who had dedicated his life to discipline, focus, and self-control. Seagal didn't announce his identity. He didn't need to. His presence spoke volumes. His calm strength radiated authority, and even without words, the soldiers began to feel the shift. He was not someone to bully or intimidate. A few younger soldiers, braver than the rest, began discreetly filming the encounter on their phones. The whispers grew louder. "That's Steven Seagal, the movies, the martial arts legend. Does the general even know who he's messing with? He's unshakable." The general's face flickered with confusion and irritation. He tightened his grip, but even he began to sense the shift in power. The soldiers' eyes were no longer on him, but on Seagal. Every attempt to intimidate seemed to bounce harmlessly off the master, his calm demeanor absorbing the aggression. Steven finally spoke, his voice still soft, controlled, but carrying an authority that made even the bravest officers listen. "Respect is not given because of fear or position," he said. "It is earned through actions, through integrity, through how we treat others." The words echoed across the base. Soldiers exchanged glances. Some felt a sudden swell of pride and awe for the man standing silently before them. Others felt a pang of embarrassment for the general, who was clearly losing the subtle control he had tried to assert. The general tried to recover, his voice rising in a harsh bark. "I am the commanding officer here. You will." But even he faltered. The soldiers' murmurs, the recognition spreading like wildfire, and Seagal's unshakable composure all worked together to disarm the situation without a single blow being struck. The general's authority was still official, but the respect of the base was slipping away with every second he failed to maintain control. One of the older officers, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, stepped slightly forward. "Sir, that's Seagal. Steven Seagal." The words hung in the air. Gasps echoed around the base. Eyes widened. The general froze mid-step, realization dawning. For the first time, he understood exactly who he had confronted. A man whose reputation was legendary, whose skills and discipline were unmatched, and whose calm authority could command respect without aggression. Seagal, as always, remained humble. He didn't smirk. He didn't gloat. He simply stood there, letting the recognition do the work for him. The soldiers now watched not just a confrontation, but a master class in patience, composure, and quiet strength. Even the general, flushed and tense, seemed to hesitate. There was no gloating, no taunting. Seagal's aura alone communicated the message. Power without control is nothing, respect cannot be demanded, and strength is nothing without humility. The soldiers began whispering excitedly among themselves. He's incredible. The general messed up. Did you see how calm he stayed? The tension that had gripped the base began to shift, from fear of the general to awe for the man standing firmly and quietly in the center. Every movement of Seagal's body radiated control, discipline, and respect, a silent message to all watching. True strength does not need to shout, it simply exists. And in that heavy, electrified air, the entire base waited. Every soldier, every officer, every bystander wanted to see what would happen next. Would the general finally realize the error of his ways? Would the encounter escalate further, or would respect and discipline prevail? The anticipation was unbearable. Every second stretched longer than the last. What will Steven Seagal do next? And how will the general respond? The stage was perfectly set for the next phase. A confrontation that would not be about brute force, but about humility, control, and the ultimate lesson in respect. The base was silent, except for the occasional shuffle of boots and the faint hum of distant vehicles. The tension hung like a thick fog, almost tangible, wrapping around everyone present. The general's face was red with frustration, his jaw tight, his hands trembling slightly as he realized that his authority alone could not intimidate the man before him. Steven Seagal stood perfectly still, feet firmly planted, arms relaxed by his sides. Every inch of his body radiated confidence, control, and quiet power. The soldiers who had been whispering moments ago were now completely captivated. Their eyes, wide with awe, followed his every subtle movement. Cameras from phones recorded discreetly, preserving a confrontation that would soon make history. Finally, Seagal broke the silence. His voice was calm, even, but carried a weight that instantly drew the attention of everyone present. "Respect," he said, pausing slightly for emphasis, "is not something you take with force, nor something you demand through fear. It is earned through the way you treat others, through integrity, discipline, and humility." The words resonated across the base. Soldiers exchanged glances, nodding subtly. Some felt relief, others felt awe. The general, however, froze mid-step, confusion and disbelief crossing his face. He had expected a reaction fueled by fear or aggression, maybe even retaliation, but instead, he was met with calm authority that could not be intimidated. Seagal took a deliberate step forward, closing the small distance between them, but he did not raise a hand. He did not strike. He simply leaned in slightly, eyes locking onto the general's, conveying a silent, undeniable truth. Aggression without wisdom is powerless. Your strength, Seagal continued, his tone unwavering, means nothing if it is used to belittle, humiliate, or intimidate. True power, he said, letting the words sink in, comes from control of your mind, your body, and your actions. The general's fists clenched, but his stance wavered. Even he felt the weight of Seagal's words, the undeniable authority behind them. Every soldier present could sense the subtle shift. The balance of power was tilting. It was no longer about rank or title. It was about moral strength versus raw aggression. A few officers tried to interject, attempting to calm the general or regain control of the situation. "Sir, maybe we should," one began, but he trailed off as he realized no one could command Steven Seagal, not with words or force. The presence of the martial arts master rendered conventional authority almost irrelevant. The soldiers' whispers turned into quiet exclamations of awe. "Did you see that?" one said. "He's not even moving, and he's controlling the entire situation." Another added, "This is unbelievable. The general has no idea what he's up against." Seagal paused, letting the tension stretch a moment longer. Then he added, softly but with clear authority, "Leadership is not about fear. It is about earning respect, not demanding it. Humility is not weakness. It is the greatest strength a person can possess." At that, the general's face flushed even deeper. The red in his cheeks was no longer just anger, it was embarrassment. He had underestimated the man before him. The soldiers began to realize that the confrontation had already been decided, not by fists or weapons, but by composure, wisdom, and moral authority. Seagal did not gloat. He did not celebrate. He simply stepped back, allowing the weight of his words and demeanor to settle over the base. The soldiers' admiration was palpable. The whispers grew louder, this time filled with awe rather than confusion. He didn't even touch him, and he humiliated the general with nothing but words and presence. That's insane. I've never seen anything like this. Even the general's subordinates looked at him in disbelief. His control over the situation had crumbled, not because of failure of strategy or orders, but because of the undeniable authority and integrity of Steven Seagal. Every move, every calm breath, every measured word had shifted the entire dynamic. Seagal's final words for the moment were simple, but they carried the weight of experience and wisdom. Remember this: power without respect is meaningless. Authority without integrity is dangerous. Treat others well, and you will never be powerless. The soldiers held their breath, some nodding in silent agreement, some still shaking their heads in awe. The general, humbled and clearly shaken, took a cautious step back, realizing that this encounter had taught him a lesson he would not soon forget. The stage was now set for the final reveal, the moment when the general would fully understand the man standing before him, and when the base would collectively witness the full scope of Steven Seagal's control, discipline, and moral strength. How will the general respond now? Will he finally respect the man standing before him, or will he continue to let anger guide him? The anticipation among the soldiers was electric, every eye fixed on the two men as the confrontation neared its climax. The base was still, every soldier frozen in place, holding their breath. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft shuffle of boots and the faint murmur of whispered conversations. The general's face was a mask of anger, frustration, and now, slowly creeping realization. For the first time, he began to comprehend the situation. The man standing in front of him was no ordinary visitor. Steven Seagal remained calm, eyes steady, posture relaxed. He had not raised a hand, nor had he shouted or threatened. Yet his authority was undeniable. Every soldier in the vicinity could sense it, the quiet, commanding presence of a master who had spent a lifetime honing his mind, body, and spirit. The general had tried to assert power through intimidation, but it was quickly clear that this approach would not work here. An older officer stepped forward cautiously, addressing the general in a low voice. "Sir, that's Steven Seagal, the martial arts master." The words seemed to hit the general like a punch. His grip loosened, his shoulders slumped slightly, and for the first time in the encounter, he looked vulnerable. The whispers among the soldiers escalated into audible gasps. Recognition spread like wildfire. "It's Seagal, the master, the legend." The general's face reddened further, a mix of embarrassment and dawning respect. His eyes darted around the base as if searching for validation from his subordinates, but the reactions were unanimous: awe, admiration, and silent acknowledgement of Seagal's superiority in this confrontation. He realized that he had overstepped, that he had allowed his ego and temper to dictate his actions, and that here, he had met someone whose control far surpassed his own. Seagal spoke softly, deliberately, each word measured. True strength is not shown through aggression or fear. Power without respect is meaningless. Authority without integrity is dangerous. The soldiers nodded, some whispering quietly to each other. Some of the younger men even began to take out their phones to record the final moments, realizing that this was history in the making. This was a confrontation that demonstrated that courage, composure, and discipline could outweigh brute force and unchecked authority. The general took a step back, lowering his gaze. The embarrassment was palpable. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped, realizing that no words could undo the lesson he had just received. He had been humbled, not through punishment or retaliation, but through the undeniable authority and presence of a man who chose restraint over aggression. Seagal did not gloat, did not mock, did not demand acknowledgement. He simply stood there, silent, radiating control. The soldiers in the crowd leaned in, hanging on every subtle movement, every expression. The contrast between the general's visible frustration and Seagal's calm strength was striking, almost cinematic in its intensity. Finally, Seagal addressed the crowd, his tone calm but firm, carrying across the base. Leadership is measured not by how much fear you can inspire, but by how much respect you earn. Never forget, humility is the greatest strength a person can possess. A wave of murmured agreement swept through the soldiers. Some nodded slowly, others exchanged odd glances. Even those loyal to the general could not deny the truth in Seagal's words. The general, now humbled, slowly lifted his eyes to meet Seagal's, offering a tentative nod, a silent acknowledgement of the lesson learned. The base erupted in quiet applause, not loud cheering, but the kind of respectful acknowledgement that comes from witnessing mastery and integrity firsthand. Soldiers began whispering excitedly. "Did you see how calm he stayed? He didn't even touch him," and the general had no choice but to step back. "This is incredible, a masterclass in composure." And then came the moment to engage the audience directly, maximizing interaction. If you were Steven Seagal, would you forgive the general for humiliating you in front of everyone? Type yes if you would, or a no if you think he should face consequences. Comment below. Seagal's demeanor never changed. He allowed the moment to speak for itself, the humbling of the general, the recognition of his own authority, and the awe of the soldiers. His restraint and wisdom had turned a potential confrontation into a lesson in respect, discipline, and moral authority. The general, fully humbled, finally spoke, his voice subdued. I apologize, Steven. I misjudged you and allowed my temper to get the better of me." Seagal nodded slightly, acknowledging the apology but without a hint of satisfaction. The soldiers in the crowd felt the tension release, replaced with awe, admiration, and a renewed understanding of the power of composure. The moment was captured on countless phones, destined to spread beyond the base. Social media would later amplify this story, showcasing the extraordinary restraint, courage, and authority that one man could wield without ever raising a hand. The stage was now set for the final resolution. The aftermath, the viral spread of the story, and the lessons about humility, respect, and true strength. The sun had fully risen over the military base, casting long shadows across the training grounds, but the energy of the morning lingered like an electric current. Soldiers moved cautiously now, not from fear, but from a renewed sense of awe. The confrontation between Steven Seagal and the general had become the defining moment of their morning, and perhaps the defining lesson of their careers. Word spread quickly across the base. Soldiers recounted what they had witnessed to one another, each version slightly more dramatic than the last. Phones buzzed with videos and whispers, snippets of Seagal's calm authority, his unwavering composure, and the general's humbling circulated among the ranks. The story became a symbol of restraint, discipline, and respect, a living lesson in the power of controlled strength. Social media, of course, soon caught wind of the footage. Within hours, videos from the base went viral. Millions around the world watched, captivated by the unfolding drama. A famous martial artist confronted by a high-ranking officer, yet never resorting to violence, only asserting his authority with calm, deliberate words and unshakable presence. Comments flooded in from all corners of the globe. "That's how true power looks. I've never seen someone stay so calm under pressure. Amazing." The general learned a lesson in humility the hard way. Respect always. The story transcended entertainment. It became a lesson, a moral parable about the importance of humility, self-control, and earning respect. News outlets picked up the footage, analyzing the encounter frame by frame, praising Seagal for his discipline and restraint, and the soldiers for their recognition of what real strength looks like. Back at the base, the general reflected on what had just happened. For the first time in years, he felt humbled not by force, but by moral authority and composure. He realized that the lesson went far beyond his personal embarrassment. It was a lesson in leadership itself. True leadership was not about wielding power to intimidate. It was about inspiring respect through integrity, patience, and wisdom. Seagal, meanwhile, remained humble. He did not seek fame from the incident, nor did he gloat over the general's mistake. His focus remained on the lesson itself, the universal truth he had demonstrated without violence or threat. Respect is earned, not demanded. Strength is greatest when controlled. Humility is the highest form of power. The soldiers, inspired by what they had witnessed, vowed to carry the lesson with them in their duties and personal lives. Many reported feeling a shift in perspective, recognizing that true authority comes from self-discipline, not the mere ability to impose one's will. And the story, of course, did not stay confined to the military base. Across social media, forums, and news sites, millions of viewers debated, discussed, and shared the lesson. The engagement soared. People commented, shared their own experiences, and reflected on times when humility and composure had made the difference in their lives. Seagal's message resonated universally. The encounter became a blueprint for handling conflict with integrity, showing that one could face aggression without aggression, intimidation without intimidation. It was a lesson in dignity that transcended ranks, titles, and fame. To end the story with a direct connection to viewers. Studio microphone. If you believe that respect, humility, and integrity are more powerful than fear and aggression, type respect in the comments. Share this story, and remember, true strength lies in control, not intimidation. Subscribe for more incredible stories of courage and wisdom. By the time the day ended, the base had returned to routine, but the impact of that morning lingered. Soldiers carried the lesson into every drill, every interaction, and every challenge they faced. And around the world, millions carried a reminder. Power is fleeting without respect, and true authority comes from calm strength and integrity. Steven Seagal's quiet demonstration of discipline and composure had transformed a tense confrontation into a global lesson, a story of humility, courage, and the enduring power of self-control. And as the world watched, it became clear, no act of aggression, no show of authority, could ever surpass the quiet force of integrity and respect.